Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back. I have a banger podcast for you guys today where I interview the owner of Limelight Services. His name is Jason Visnic. He built up his plumbing and HVAC business from scratch, literally as just a single technician about 20 years ago to now owning a $4.5 million business with 37 employees. So we're gonna talk about some of the things that he learned along the way that he wished that he knew when he was first starting, pricing, marketing, you name it. I think you guys are gonna like it, so hang tight and enjoy. All right, so what's up, Jason? Welcome into the Contractor CEO podcast. Great to have you, man. So tell me a little bit, how big is your business? What do you guys do in revenue?
So we did $4.5 million last year, and we're trending to do about $5 million this year. We have roughly 35 employees and been in business for 16 years, average growth of about 33% each year.
Man, 33%. That's crazy. That's awesome, and I'm excited to learn about your background. I want to take it back a little bit, so that's where you're at now. Did you get started? Did you come from a family of business owners, or what's your background? How'd you get into this, right? Like, how'd you land in electrical, plumbing, and heating?
Thanks for asking me that. I was raised by a single mom, not in construction at all. She worked as a pharmacy tech and raised myself and my sister. I moved to Colorado in 1998 and got into the electrical trade because my best friend, who was the one that got me to move to Colorado, he was an electrician. He said, hey, I could get you a job. So I did that, and 24 years later, it's still doing it.
Man, that's crazy. So you started out as an electrician, and at first you were looking at that as like just a job, or did you already have like future plans and future vision? Like one day I want to do my own thing, or where were you kind of at that stage?
I want to give my good friend, I'll name check him here, Andrew Makeley. He always talked about if you're going to be an electrician or just be in the trades in general, why wouldn't you have the goal of working for yourself? So honestly, he instilled that in me, and I just from the beginning was like, okay, the path is apprentice, then there are a couple of levels of licenses, then master license, then work for yourself. And it just was the logical progression of being in the business.
Okay, so your friend obviously didn't know how stressful it was to run a business back then.
I actually worked for him for a little bit.
Oh, did you? Okay.
And I love him to death, and he wasn't really like growth minded, so we worked together great, and but it just never was a fulfilling thing for me as far as like being able to be in control of the things that I wanted to be in control of.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, because I always look at that and I'm like, man, if I knew everything that I knew now about how hard it was to run a business, I was like, I don't know if I'd actually have a business. It's funny, I have a marathon coming up in September. And I joined like just being really cocky and ignorant, and I had never ran before. And I was like, oh, it's fine. Like it's 26 miles, but I was like, worst case is I could walk. And it's funny now that I've been training, I'm like, oh my God, this is terrible. But I've already signed up, so I'm in it. And I'm like, I'm glad I didn't know how terrible it was gonna be, or else I would have never actually gotten started. And it was like the same thing with business. And I'm not saying business is terrible, but it's like, yeah, if you think of the marathon as a marathon and not as like one step after the other, it could be very overwhelming. So how long were you actually in the trades, like working as an electrician, before you decided to open up shop?
So for me, it took about 7.5 years. The absolute fastest you could do it is 5 as an electrician, just because of how the licensing works in Colorado. Even then, I mean, I think you have to protract that a little bit. Maybe 6 years is the fastest you could do it within reason. So I felt pretty good about 7.5 years at that point. And not really grand designs. I certainly didn't envision even having employees. Mostly.
Really? So you thought it was just going to be you, your truck, servicing the customers, basically.
Okay, well, timeline's important here. So.
Okay.
I started in 2000, 8 years later is 2008. What was happening with the economy in 2008?
Right.
So there wasn't actually work to be done, which both drove me into working for myself because working for my good friend Andrew. He didn't have enough work to keep me busy. So we had a very good arrangement to where I could work for myself and him. So he had maybe 20 hours a week of work for me, and then I drummed up what I could drum up for the rest of my time. And that arrangement only lasted 4 months before I was completely on my own. So by the beginning of 2009, I was 100% taking care of myself.
Really? Even through the financial crisis? That's impressive.
Well, yeah. And as a guy who loves new residential construction, that is what I'm actually skilled at as an electrician. I mean, I can do all kinds of electrical work, but that's what I loved and what I knew I was good at. I was desperate for that kind of work, and there just wasn't very much of it to be had. So I did do I did anything I could do. Remodels and small jobs. And
when you say remodels, like everything, like you were, or it was just like
electrical.
Oh, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Dang. Okay. Gotcha. So you got your name. So when you first started for yourself, how did you even start getting your name out there?
It's funny because as we talk about this, we'll get into, I'm sure, the conversation about how I struggled with the problem of actually not wanting attention at a certain point. Early on, I wanted the attention, of course. So it was a lot of like Craigslist, which is free. This was back before I think even people really figured out Google in the construction industry. There, for quite a long time, I was actually the top ranked electrician in the area just by having, I remember the number well, I had 16 reviews, and I was super proud of my 16.
16 reviews. I mean, that's better. That's better than what some people even have now, which is like so funny. Which now, just so the audience knows, I obviously did my research before having you on here, and you've got like 600 some reviews now, just on Google.
Right.
Which I saw that. I'm like, man, that's impressive. And your average star rating is like a 5. So I'm sure not all 600 whatever reviews are 5 stars, but that was actually like pretty impressive. It's actually almost so good. I don't want to get into this just yet, but it made me think if that actually might be hurting you because it almost looks fake. Like, I don't know if you ever get that, but
we could talk about that. But yeah, the whole, so I'm super proud of this. I would say 99% of our reviews they're real reviews from our customers. We actually have, right now it's 622 reviews total. 5 of them are 4-star reviews, and I'm so upset about those 4 stars. We actually don't have any 3-star, 2-star, or 1-star reviews at all.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and that's actually all in the last year and a half when we really shifted the direction of our business. We pushed really hard because we needed to build up a good reputation quickly. We have the time, we have the 16 years, but so what happened I apologize if I'm getting us off track a little bit.
No, yeah, tell me.
But we were, so I had kind of started with the Google and even a little bit of SEO type stuff that I could figure out just being a guy who didn't know anything about it. I reached a point where I didn't want attention and I didn't maintain that page. It actually went away. So for, I would say, a good 8 years, you couldn't even find us.
And you wanted that?
I wouldn't say I wanted it. I just didn't know what to do with the attention because of the type of business we had built at that point. It was, my biggest problems were keeping enough people to match the amount of work that we had coming in. So we were profitable and it worked, but that was kind of the beginning of like this. I recognized the problem with the model we were in at that time. Okay.
Gotcha. So you're saying, and then, okay, so when you say you recognize the problem of the model you're in at that time, so what was that model compared to now?
So we did new residential construction.
For like home builders?
Right, working for home builders, a lot of what you would describe as tract homes. We did some kind of custom homes, but really a lot of the national builder type stuff. That was, at that time, that was kind of our strike zone, which is all about efficiency. Just get as much of that work as you can, get your crew to run it as fast as they can without quality suffering, and basically just build as good a business as you can with what you can make in that side of the business. So that's where we had been. But we built that up for, I guess I would say the first 13 and a half, 14 years.
Okay.
Before I recognized, I was seeing the signs for a while that it was problematic because there were things I wanted to do in our business that I couldn't. Most importantly, have like a path for our employees to grow and grow their careers, not just as electricians, but I wanted people to be able, if they wanted to get into marketing or if they wanted to get into management or the dozens of other directions you can go in business, we didn't have a business that could provide any kind of path for people. So, and then also with the new construction kind of industry, when housing slows down, which it has, we're living in it right now. The problem of what do you do when you build up all this overhead that you can't unload when the work slows down? So that there's kind of a whole story I can get into about how we got into the home services end of the business. It started with, I want to tell this story. I'm going to tell this story.
No, I want to hear it because I think it's also going to be valuable for the audience too, because most of the people who listen they're in the residential now.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of funny because a lot of them, they probably look at, potentially companies like Limelight Services, or they look at these bigger companies and they might even have a tendency to be jealous because they're like, look how big they are. But sometimes, and I'm not saying there is very successful companies who do, track home builds and make a lot of money off that. But it's a bit of a scary game too, because margins are slim. It's all about volume.
Yeah.
You build up this machine and then all of a sudden, what happens if the volume starts coming down and now you got this big machine you don't know what to do with. But anyway, so I want to hear the story of how you got into it, because I think it's going to be applicable for a lot of people.
Really quick break from the show just to remind you guys that Contractor CEO is the best digital marketing agency for contractors. I own my own construction business and I had to learn the hard way of how to generate leads, whether it's Google ads, Facebook ads, SEO. We know how to scale here at Contractor CEO. So if you're looking to scale your business and one of the things that's slowing you down is not getting enough leads, right? You could have good leads, but if you don't have the quantity, then you're gonna have to lower your prices. You're gonna have all these problems. Anyways, reach out to us here at Contractor CEO if you want more high quality leads, and we can definitely help you out. See you there.
Yeah, so I love this story because we were hired by an electrician to wire his personal home. So, and this wasn't someone that I knew. I know a lot of the electricians in the area, and I knew his name because he had a business that I recognized and a family name that's been around forever. So, we were hired, and I personally worked on his house, and we chatted it up quite a bit. This was probably 7 years ago at this point, so I didn't do anything with this experience for quite a while. It just kind of sat in my head. But as I was working on his house, we were chatting. I'm like, okay, why don't you wire your own house? First of all, you're an electrician. You're paying someone you don't even know. I mean, we have a good reputation. He asked around, and that's how he ended up calling. But through the conversation, he explained he had been in the same business, the same construction game that we were in, and he had just decided at a certain point that it didn't work for him, and he wanted to get into home service. And at that point, he was an electrician, but he had added the plumbing and the HVAC to what he was doing. It's basically the exact model that we're doing now. I got a lot of good details about what he did. And again, everything he told me, I was like, this is super interesting. I'm way too busy to worry about any of this applying to me.
And when you say
right
that
now.
he was telling you about like the home service as in working direct to customer, like working for homeowners. So he was telling you about that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Which being in construction and having too much work and not being experienced in running a business, if I'm being honest, I was really just trying to figure out how to keep the machine going without just growing too fast or all the problems that kind of, my bandwidth wasn't there to consider it. And I really didn't like that corner of the business of being an electrical contractor. And there's all kinds of reasons for that now I love it. Now that it's all about your pricing and never compromising any part of your business. but there's a lot of compromise in the kind of the construction world. You take care of the things that are most important to you, and then you kind of fill in whatever else you can. But in the philosophy of the home services is really you charge what you have to charge in order to deliver a 5-star experience every time, and you can't deliver a 5-star experience every time unless your company is great.
Yep.
So, and not necessarily that I picked all of this up from working for this electrician, but the idea of someone else I knew transitioning from construction into the service world, I was already watching him be successful with it. And of course, after we were done working on his house personally, I still kind of watched his business grow. And so we kind of carried on doing what we were doing for a few more years. I would say it was around 2015. A few years of just growth and growth and growth.
Yeah.
And he actually sold his business to another local business that does the same thing. And then they sold to a big...
like a PE firm? Or?
Right, yes, yeah. So it was kind of this recognition that wow, there's really, if you want to have a business that has value, to really boil it down, working directly for homeowners is just a really, I'm not going to say it's bulletproof, and it's certainly extremely difficult in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But, I think we're all about building something with value.
Yeah.
We want our businesses to have a monetary value, but we want it to be valuable to the community.
Yeah. Well, valuable. I mean, that's the thing. And if it's valued to an investor, it also means it's valuable to yourself as the owner. And this is something that I've been working on lately too, is I realize the stuff that investors care about, like even if you never plan to sell, you actually want it to be valuable to an investor, because if they want it, that means that you're going to have a better time having it too. So there's this certain risk. And this was something that always scared me about what you call the construction, I call commercial.
Yeah.
Same thing, the commercial world. Is there's this risk called key man risk. And it's funny, key customer risk. Key man risk is if you actually have someone inside your own business and they're running too much. And then like if they were to leave, your business was to fall apart. But key customer risk is if you have a customer and if they were to leave. And what I always feared the most, because we were even talking about this before starting to film, is I got into business because I wanted to have control. And there's just something that is scary. It's like, man, if you have an account that's providing $2 million out of your $4 million a year, and all of a sudden, even if they don't decide to leave you, well, they own you. Because, man, if they want cheaper pricing, you got to say, like, if they say jump, you have to say how high. Because you know that if they leave you, then you're screwed. Yeah. And that's something that I've always loved about going direct to the customer, is no one owns me. And at the end of the day, I mean, I still have to provide a great product and be able to sell. And there's a whole different bunch of problems, but no customer can ever, I guess, own me, which I always really liked. Yeah. Since you've made the transition and you're still in commercial / construction, right? What's the breakdown on your business, like percentage wise? Like what percentage is the home service and what's the commercial?
Currently it's about 50-50.
50-50.
We believe in the growth potential of the direct to customer. And really for us, we want to work for the homeowners that live in their houses. That's, at least for the home services, plumbing, electrical, heating and air.
Yep.
That's really just, we all want to be appreciated. Those customers will appreciate what you've put into your business.
Yeah, they'll appreciate it. And the other thing is, like, if you work, for instance, for like a property management company, and the property management company is working for an investor, then at the end of the day, it's the same exact model as the commercial model, which is like, they just want a cheap, because they're running a business, like, and they look at you as like an expense. Yeah. Versus if you work direct for a customer, is different, right? They're like, hey, this is my home. Like, I want to live here for a while. I don't want to deal with these electrical or these plumbing problems anymore. And so it's a way different sale. So how did you start getting into that? Because basically what you said is you started, you had a website, then you let the website go away. Yep. So then you weren't even known. And then obviously that's, in residential or direct to customer, you have to be known. So how did you start kind of branching to that market?
Yeah, there's kind of a timeline to this. So where I recognized things, which, wasn't hard to see, the interest rates started going up at the beginning of 22 was the year where we went from 3% to 7% interest rates on mortgages. So as things were going up in the news was they're going to keep raising rates. I thought, okay, well, this is going to decimate what we've done because we've always been a little more expensive than everybody else and really lived on the ideal that we're better. We're the best you can get at home construction. And realizing that as things are going to get more competitive, that those who do pay that little bit extra are not going to have that little bit extra to pay. So I saw it like things are going to drop off. I have to do something about it. And I'm a bit of a risk taker, and certainly there was a way more measured approach to do it. But I don't mind taking a chance if I believe in it. So and another thing that happened is we lost a couple of good employees to companies that do exactly what we do now with the home services.
Oh, because they could probably pay more, huh?
Yeah. So they were handing out bonuses, and we've always paid really high for our area. I guess I would hesitate to say the best, but I think it probably is. So for us to lose really well-paid employees to another company raised a kind of a red flag. How are they able to pay better than I can?
Yeah.
And these are people that we loved and invested a lot of time in. And I always care first and foremost about what's best for them. But, we're still trying to run a business here. So that was a little bit of a trigger moment of losing someone that we really liked to a home services company. So I thought, okay, well, I just got to figure this out. We got to get into home service.
Yeah.
Us still being electrical. And then there's kind of a timeline to we were learning the software and realizing, wow, it works really good if you do plumbing and if you do HVAC. So maybe we should just go ahead and do that. So we went ahead and without even necessarily having a plan, we just said, okay, we're going to do all three. We're going to figure it out. This is not advice.
Was that the risk that you said that you took? Because you said that you're a risk taker. So the risk was taking on these additional services.
Yes, it was very risky because I'm not a plumber or an HVAC person.
Yeah.
So and you could use the word foolish. That's fine. I
don't think so at all. But man, you're talking to because I started my landscape company, and some people know this and some people don't, but I actually started a landscape company 2 years ago, and it was funny. It was actually out of ego because I started my concrete company 50-50 with my father-in-law, and we scaled really fast, but I always had it in the back of my head, well, are we scaling because of him and because of me? And so I was like, I know what I should do. I should open up a landscape company. So like bright idea, did that. I had never done landscaping before, but I was like, oh, I could sell it. And I got into it. And in our first year, we actually did $700,000 in landscaping. And I hired out all positions. So I had a salesman and project manager. I had a crew of 3 people. But man, the amount of stress that brought, and only because I still had my real full-time baby, which was the concrete company. And this was my little $700,000 side project.
Okay.
I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I did recently decide to shut that down. Oh. Mainly actually so I could focus on the concrete company and then obviously contractor CEO.
Yeah.
But so I don't think it's foolish at all, because I more think it's actually foolish the opposite, because there's 2 risks, right? So you said at that time it was risky to keep doing what you were currently doing, because you were looking at the writing on the wall. You're like, hey, if we keep going, then there's going to be problems. Yeah. And so there's the risk of action and there's the risk of inaction.
Oh, yeah.
And oftentimes, in my opinion, it is far less risky to take the action and just move, even if you don't know what the heck you're doing, versus say, oh, no, that's too risky. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm like, well, most companies that just do what they're going to continue to do, they end up dying because the world changes, whether it's interest rates, whether it's technology, whether it's, I mean, man, there's a million things that change. And if you don't change with it, well, you're going to get left behind. Yeah. So I think maybe, we're not the best to ask with that, but I think what you did was not foolish.
Hey, real quick break from the show. I wanted to ask you guys, what is the most expensive thing in business? If you're watching this, you might be thinking, oh, it's labor. Or maybe you're thinking, no, it's equipment. Equipment is so expensive. Maybe you're thinking it's materials. Well, no matter what your guess was, if it was those three, it's actually wrong. The biggest expense in business is simply just not knowing how to make more money. So knowledge, right? Like if you knew how to make $1 million today, well, guess what? You'd be making $1 million. So if you're not making $1 million, let's say you're making 100,000, then not knowing how to make $1 million is costing you 900,000 bucks. You get what I mean? Well, anyways, don't try to do business yourself. Here at Contractor CEO, we've built and scaled our own concrete and landscape business to $4 million plus and are helping all kinds of other people with the proper systems and information on how to grow their business. So if that's something that interests you and you want to get the knowledge to make more money, fill out a form down below, talk to our team, and we'll see how we can help you. See you there.
What were some of the challenges that you went through adding on this new service line and getting more direct to customer? Because that's different as well, even beyond just the products. It's different. Like the customers demand more. It's just, So what were some of your challenges?
The software that we use is called Service Titan. It's
that's like the biggest.
Okay, you're familiar with it.
In that industry anyways. It's the biggest.
And it's by far the most robust software. It does so much more than any other option. And me wanting to just always go for the best thing, I'm like, okay, I'll go for the best thing and I'll figure it out. And kind of the same attitude towards the plumbing and HVAC. Let's jump in. I believe in my own ability to figure out how to run a business that does these things. So I jumped in. The actual pieces that you need in place, you have to have a master plumber. So I figured I was either going to try to partner up with a plumbing and an HVAC company or hire the people who have the master licenses. And that's the route we ended up going with it. And then really the big thing is we joined an organization called Nexstar. They are, as far as I'm concerned, it's hard to imagine an organization that is better than them at what they do. They have all of the systems and coaches in place to help companies like ours to implement everything that you need to do this kind of work effectively. So we joined that organization at the end of 22, and it's been really just incredible. It's a lot. It's so much to learn and implement, and I would say we're really still in the very early stages of what we're doing. But it's I've learned more in the last year and a half that I know will benefit me through the end of my at least working days and beyond, even beyond that really, than I did it at all in the first 14 years in business. And it's really just because I would say I was willing to take a risk and challenge myself and bet on myself really.
Yep. And so what's the name of that program you said?
Nexstar Network.
Nexstar. And are they specifically in like the plumbing, HVAC, electrical?
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. So, out of curiosity, how much do you pay for that?
So let's see. So they have you have to have kind of an income requirement, and we just barely squeaked in. I think it was 4 million, and we were at 4 million right around the time that we signed up. So we just barely qualified. They only take on a certain number of companies in a region. So there was a little concern that we might not get in because there were already too many members around. But we did get in. It was $40,000. Now, I'm sure their fees change every year, but for us, so to join was $40,000, which is a tremendous amount of money. But then the yearly fee after that is much lower. I think it's $12,000 a year. And actually, it pays for itself yearly because you get signed up in all these rebate programs.
Oh, wow.
So we get, because we're Nexstar members, we get kickbacks on Service Titan and Angie ads and all kinds of things that we legitimately need and would have to pay for in our business anyhow.
Man, that's cool. And I asked you because I've noticed at least me personally, I've noticed a trend that among some of the biggest contractors and really just biggest business owners is they take these leaps of faith and these investments. And I'm sure at the time, I can even imagine, I don't know what type of wife you have, but I know if I approached my wife and said, hey, I'm about to spend 40 grand, she would not be too happy, because even if you have money, it's like a lot of people, they want to get their money and they want to keep it and they want to put it in their closet and they just want to have it and hoard it. Yeah. So what was that like as far as getting rid of that? I mean, was that a big sum of money for you at the time, or?
It was, yeah. That's a big amount. I'm blessed to have really, my wife and I are very good communicators. We're really just similar people. So we had been having conversations about the direction of the business and the direction of the economy. And there's a really great quote. I'm going to get the quote wrong, but Bob Iger, do you know who he is?
No, I don't.
And it might be Iger. I'm pretty sure it's Iger. So he's, at least at one time, was the CEO of Disney. Around the time that they acquired Marvel and Star Wars, well, Lucasfilm, Star Wars, I forget. There's probably other things that they were acquiring, and in the business world, they considered it a massive risk. But he said that it was a bigger risk to not do anything. So that was really, Melissa and I, we talked and we agreed, like, this is the risk we need to take right now.
Yeah.
Because it would be worse to not do anything.
Yeah. Every time that I've ever invested in my education, and let's just say if all things were to go downhill, let's just think worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Interest rates keep climbing. We go into the worst depression we've ever seen. People stop paying any type of money for any type of home service outside of like the absolutely necessary, and we have to start over. That's actually the one thing that's ever given me peace of mind, is the one thing that people can't take away from me is my skill set.
Yeah.
So I'm like, man, even if I lost everything and I had to like move in with my mom again, I mean, man, I hope not. But like, even if, the one thing that will always stick with me that I'm forever grateful for is all these things that I've learned. What have been, so when you bought this program, you said that these 2 years have basically been more valuable as far as the things that you've learned than the previous, 16. What are, like, obviously we don't have time to get into all the topics, but in what regards, I guess, like, what are some of the things that you're kind of learning that you're like, man, if I only knew this like 10 years ago, like, what are some of those things?
I have a little story about that that's kind of funny. So I'm learning the software. Day one of training, to learn ServiceTitan, they make you take like 3 weeks worth of classes. They're not even going to let you use it unless they feel like you can not wreck your business using it.
Wow.
So day one was kind of just overview. Day two was dispatch. So the way that I learn, I really need to understand it before I can move on to the next point. And this is why I was not a good classroom learner. I was probably a B student in school. So we're going through dispatch training and I get hung up on something really early. And by the end of this like 2-hour class, I'm like, what the heck is dispatch? I don't, like, I understand it, but I'm like, how does this apply to your business? So and basically dispatch is just scheduling in real time.
Yep.
I know how to do scheduling. I've been doing that for years, and I do it in real time, but I just didn't really make the connections to how that worked. So that's just one little thing. Now it's not just that I understand what dispatch is now, but I understand all kinds of details about what effective dispatch really is and how you might get caught up in, like, we want efficient dispatch. So we might send this one person to 2 or 3 calls because they're close to there. But really, the more effective way for your business, for revenue, is if you have a high performing technician, you want to send them to your better opportunity calls. So it might mean that you're inefficient from a driving around perspective, but if you have somebody who has a higher percentage close rate, basically, and you have this job, say it's a water heater, those are high opportunity jobs for us. You want your best performer at your highest opportunity jobs.
That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Well, especially because in my world we have crews, but it's kind of, well, I also have salespeople, so ours are not like the same, like they don't sell and do, you know, we have separate phases. Yeah. But that's interesting that, I guess that makes sense. And it is funny because, you know, this year it is relatable because I just got my second salesperson at my concrete company. And it's funny, I'm even starting to notice that. And I'm like doing that almost like subconsciously myself. Because if I get a really good lead, the last thing I want to do is send my new salesperson there. Because like, don't get me wrong, he's not bad, but he's like, he's fresh out of college and he's not there yet. He's funny. He's young. Yeah. And he's not anywhere close to the level of my other salesperson. Yeah. And it's funny because it's like, well, yeah, because if you look, it's just like those small things that you don't really think about in business. Because even when you think about that, you're like, man, well, you know, my new salesperson's already going to be in Fort Collins. I'll just have him hop over there. But in reality, it would make sense to pay the extra money, lose the efficiency in certain regards, and send the A player to the A opportunity. Yes. That's interesting. Okay.
That makes sense. Just one thing.
Yeah, that's one thing.
Yeah. So, and if you're going to do...
What about like numbers? Did you learn a lot with that? Because I've noticed a lot of people have like, a lot of people that reach out to me, I'd say that was one of the things that transformed my business personally, is when I started to learn about like, because before, actually my business really wasn't making money for a while, and I literally did not know why, because I thought gross profit was like the money you made. I was like, well, it doesn't make sense. How am I not making money? I have my direct labor and my materials, and I felt pretty smart for even tracking that. And I was like, oh, the other stuff, it's not that expensive. Like, I don't have to worry about it. Yeah. But so I've noticed that was one thing for me. Like, did you learn about that? And what has that done for you?
So Nexstar will preach this, and I will, you know, I will live and die with this. You have to love your numbers. And I am guilty of, and I can see how a lot of people fall into this trap. If you are making enough money, I never looked at a P&L. But I should be ashamed.
Really?
I've gone years without looking at P&Ls with the business we were running previously. Now I look at them several times a month because I'm obsessed with the numbers now. Yeah. But you need to recognize the trends. You have to know what your margins need to be, and you have to love it. And I actually do. Even though I wouldn't call myself a math guy. But I actually really enjoy seeing what, you know, you put formulas together and build. I could work on spreadsheets all day. It's such a weird thing to love, but I love spreadsheets. So do I, yeah. But you have to do it, and really you have to learn to love it. And I don't think it's that hard to do, because the numbers are going to tell you how you're doing at running your business. Yeah. So if you're doing a good job, you're going to love what you see.
Yeah. Well, and I think I like looking at the numbers in retrospect, but my favorite part is, like you said, almost with an Excel, is I have certain sheets where I say, well, man, if I could hire 4 more people and I can keep them busy at our current prices and not increase my office staff or whatever, I'm like, what does that look like? Yeah. Like what happens to the business? And so I'm always kind of tinkering. And at the end of the day, business is just like a series of levers that you pull. And it starts with like at the very top of the funnel, right? Like if business is a funnel, it's like, okay, well, how many people are calling me on a monthly basis? Then it's like, okay, well, how many of those people that call do I talk to, right? And it's like, what's crazy is there's so many people who don't even answer their phone, and they don't even know that they could literally just double their business, all else considered, if they could just double their answer rate, for instance. And it's like, once you talk to them, then there's the booking rate, and then there's close rate, and then there's just a million different things. And I love looking at those, because you make like, you know, you take your answer rate from 50% to 70%. It's like, now you're talking to 40% more people. It's like, oh wow, like that's all I have to do. Now I can like sell 40% more. But if you're not looking at that stuff, like, you have no idea. And to be honest though, it is hard for the small guys. And so that's
Absolutely.
one of the benefits, there's going to be a lot of people that are listening to this and they're going to be like, well, yeah, easy for you guys to do. You guys are office people now, which I am now.
Hey, we're gonna take a quick break from today's show to remind you guys that I built up a $4 million concrete and landscape business in under 5 years. And I was able to do that specifically because I know how to do marketing. I know how to generate leads. And if you're getting tons of leads, you don't have to be great at sales. You don't have to be great at the individual trade because it makes up for so much of the difference. So as a reminder, here at Contractor CEO, I'm looking to partner up with one company per area to help them get more leads and win more home service projects. So if that's something that you feel interested in, then make sure you claim your spot down below, register for a free strategy session with our team here at Contractor CEO to see if we can help you scale your business.
How would you, what numbers, if you had to just pick like a couple or ratios, would you suggest for someone either just getting started or maybe they're still like the owner operator, they're still the one going out and doing the projects? What would you, if let's look at the 80-20 rule, the 20% of things that are going to bring 80% of the value. What would that be in your opinion?
Gosh, 80-20, and what's the context?
With numbers, right? You're like, okay, because there's a million different things that you could look at with numbers.
Right.
But if you were to pick out like a couple, you're like, hey, you need to do this, and this is what you do with that information.
Okay, well, I apologize. I don't know about the 80-20, but I'm stuck on the answering the phones thing. So that was a big change for us in our business. The phone always rang to me for, probably the first 10 years in business. Of course, when you're only working for builders, there's not a whole bunch of people calling you.
Yeah.
When you're not advertising anywhere, nobody knows how to get a hold of you, even if they do recognize your vans, which that was the one thing I always did, is we had nice looking vans, good graphics, but that was literally the only thing we spent money on in advertising for a decade.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was mostly just, I wanted the image. I wanted people see us. That's a nice looking van. That's a good looking logo. And, just hopefully they remember us when they need us. But, talking about answering the phones. So I got to the point where I just let everything go to voicemail. And that really gets into me not understanding how to make money off of small jobs. And it really gets into charging the right price. You have to charge enough money. This is probably the most important piece of advice. You have to charge enough to have an excellent running business. There is just no way around it. But if you are charging enough, then you're going to want the phone to ring, and you're going to want to, and it's such a weird concept to even say that I didn't want the phone to ring, but I just didn't have time for it.
Yeah.
In my mind, I was like, well, I'm going to answer this phone and just spend time talking to somebody that I can't help because I'm too busy anyhow.
Well, and with a lot of people, I think this is where they really get stuck, because a lot of people are like, oh, if they're a real lead or a real this, then they'll leave me they'll leave me a voicemail and they'll wait for me to call back. And it's just crazy because they have no idea how much money they're leaving on the table.
Oh, it's
astronomical.
You have to answer it is one of the most unforgivable sins in our business is to let anything go to voicemail. So we have our phone system we use. We have two girls in the call center. Sometimes they're staggered, so there's only one working, but there's always someone in the office to answer. But sometimes we get 3-4 calls at the same time. So we have a whole series of people that it kicks to next. And I will take phone calls all day long, and I will answer the phone as if I'm customer service.
So 37 employees, but you're not above, if it gets to you, you'll take it.
And it's, you know about lead generation. You're paying, for us, we'll pay anywhere from $60 to $100 just to get a lead generation call delivered to us. That's in our area common for there's Google local service ads.
Yeah. Yep.
I shorten it to LSA all the time because it's actually a great product, and I recommend it to anyone out there. The problem is it's very competitive.
Yeah.
But the calls you get, we get great return on investment on it. They're people who are looking for you. So to me, an unanswered phone call is $100 down the drain. And honestly, it's more than that. And
with local service ads, if you don't pick up enough of their calls they send you, they'll actually just straight up stop sending you the phone calls. They'll send them to someone else.
Yep.
And I'm a little bit jealous of your guys' industry because, you know, at least as far as I know of, the one major industry that they don't allow local service ads is concrete.
Concrete? Oh, man.
Is that not crazy? It's so sad. But, you know, with that being said, I try not to gripe on it too much because all of my competitors have to deal with the same thing.
Right.
So I'm like, at that point, it doesn't really matter. We're all living in like the same thing. And that phone call is still going to happen. That was just a medium, right? And that's what I always like to try to, that's the way that I think about marketing. Because what you just said is you're like, hey, I have this one specific area that I like to fish at. And like the fishing is really good. But if things were to change, like the fish are still there. They're just fishing elsewhere, right? Like there's like maybe in 2 years, it's going to be like, okay, how does ChatGPT recommend contractors? I actually did this the other day. It was very interesting. I asked ChatGPT, I was like, who are the best concrete contractors in Loveland, Colorado? And I was on the list, but I was like number 4. I was like, well, that's bull crap. I was like, how do I get ChatGPT to say me first? And I guarantee you one day that will be another form of marketing. Because again, people, like there will be dinosaurs. Like, because when I first started marketing, I would talk to people all the time. And I'm like, they're like, I had such a great business and I don't know what happened. I'm like, well, how are you getting phone calls? They're like, oh, the phone book. I'm like, well, dude, like people don't use the phone book anymore. Like, but it's going to be funny because the same thing will happen again. One day, Google won't be Google and people will be going elsewhere. And there's going to be a ton of old timers who are like, I've used Google for 25 years and I built my $10 million business on Google. It's like, well, dude, people don't use that anymore. Now they're on TikTok or ChatGPT. I'm not saying that's how it is now.
Yeah, but it could.
But it's helpful to know that though, because man, like you said, times they're always changing. And no, that's why I just had that like funny story and I wanted to say that because a lot of people, they get hung up on like the one thing, but like the way I like to look at it and what I like to talk about is it's not even like the product, because like some people are really successful on Angie Lead. Some people are successful on local service ads or Google. They technically all work. They just have different methods and mechanisms to make them work. And there are certain things, like you said, if you were to do local service ads and not answer, then now that wouldn't work. So it's not local service ads. It's your answering.
Right.
So is that your guys' biggest revenue driver, would you say, is local service ads on the home service side? Or what else do you guys do?
For advertising, it's our best ROI.
Best ROI? Okay.
Yeah. Everything else is kind of so we have a marketing coach. We have all kinds of coaches at Nexstar. I feel like I'm turning into a Nexstar commercial. They're not paying me.
Yeah.
Let me just clarify that.
Yeah,
I just really
absolutely.
love the organization. They've just been so helpful. More than I can describe, really. But I have a marketing coach, and he described it like marketing is kind of like going into a casino. And there's all these different games around, and say you have a team of people, and you're going to send this one to the craps table and this one to whatever, all the blackjack, all the different games you can imagine. And some of them are going to win and some are going to lose, but you're going to find out which ones are working for you, and you need to just kind of, lock in. And that's why you have to track your ROI, your return on investment, is because there are going to be things that will just lose money for you. And there's kind of I'm curious for you, do you have a target ROI?
I don't really use that. I have a target cost per lead. And then I have like a target closing percentage. So kind of.
Yeah.
But what makes it difficult, right, is like I run Facebook ads and I could get Facebook leads all day around like $50 to $60, but they're way less potent and powerful than my Google leads. So then we have to backtrack it from there. Like, okay, I'm okay with a Google lead actually taking or getting twice as expensive as a Facebook lead because I could close 2 times more of them. In fact, if you were to consider like all your numbers, this is also what is kind of like funny to me is everyone always looks at cost per lead, but I'm like, we all forget to track our cost of a salesman's time as well, because that's technically cost of acquisition too. And I haven't backtracked my numbers that much. But yeah, I do have a target cost of a per lead basis, and it's different per platform because I would pay a lot more for a Google lead than I would a Facebook lead, just based on the mindset of the person reaching out to me. And then same thing with Angie leads, I'm sure I could get them to work, but that's like my last resort for me. But there's other people.
Yeah.
Actually, I know there's a local guy to us, and he owns Lion Home Service, and I talked to him a long time ago before he was Lion Home Service.
Yeah.
And that was his best marketing, was Angie leads. And that always blew my mind because you get so many people who are like, I can't stand it, but he was making a killing off of them.
Right.
So I'm like,
Right. That's what you talked about, how each thing has its own. There's like a strategy to each thing, and it takes a while.
And with him, with Angie leads, what he was saying is he's like, well, what I learned is if you get a lead and you call within 3 minutes, then your closing percentage goes up by like 400%. And like that was his thing. And so he got really, really good at that. And now all of a sudden, all these people are like, oh, these dang Angie leads, they don't work. And this guy just figured out like, well, they do work only if you do all these other things.
Right.
Right. And so I think that's like the fun part. Because with business, I mean, even with local service ads, that will get you a lot of work. But even if you wanted them to provide more, there's only so many searches. So now if you're like, hey, I want to take Limelight from, here from 4.5 and I want to go up to 10. Well, it's like, man, local service ads might not get you there. So now it's like, now you got to figure out the name of the game. But
you need to play at more tables, but don't just keep throwing your money away. And that's, for me, I concern myself with ROI, and 5 times is kind of if we're below 5 times ROI, for all of our margins and everything we have to hit, that's kind of the number, that's the benchmark we're looking for.
See, that even seems low.
Yeah, I mean,
because even, we were talking before this, in most home service companies, I mean, if you could spend 10% of your expected revenue on marketing, I mean, what that is effectively a 10x ROI. And so
it is,
if you kind of think about it that way, for me anyways, if something wasn't doing a 10x ROI, then I would be like, at least in our industry, I'd be very concerned about that.
That's interesting. And I'm learning it again.
You get what I mean though?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we have to look at 5 as like anything below 5 is kind of like, okay, why are we doing this? Or what can we do different to boost it up? But yeah, I would say like LSA has been anywhere from like 7 to 12, depending on the season.
Okay.
Seasonality is I'm sure it is in concrete too. Yeah. But it's a big deal, especially in HVAC. But plumbing and electrical have their own seasonality also.
So where do you see, I'm kind of curious, just a couple finishing questions here before we wrap up. Where do you want to take Limelight to? Is this something you want to like, are you building it to pass off to your kids one day, or do you want to sell it? Or like, I guess, what's the end goal? What do you kind of have in mind?
I really, we got into business operations. So there's a book called Traction.
Yep.
You're familiar?
Yeah, EOS, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So we really got into EOS, and I really believe in the power of having goals now. And that's another thing that I would look when I look at our first 14 years in business. I really never had goals. It's just so important for your team to know that you care about where your business is going. As far as what we want to do with the business, I don't really have anything planned. As far as selling the business or handing it off. My son loves working in the business, so I want him to have a job. So I'm really, I want to make a reasonable living and have a job for him and work with the people I care about. Our plan, our 10-year, so EOS is real big on 1 year, 3 year, 10-year plan. So our 1 year, we're hoping to hit 6 this year. Our 3-year plan is 10 million, and our 10-year plan is 20 million. So that's where we're planning on going.
What do those numbers mean to you, though? Like, do you ever struggle with that? You know what I mean?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Like, why 20 million?
Right, and we reevaluate it every year because wouldn't it be better to have a profitable company? If you're profitable and the company is what you want it to be, I don't know if it really matters. So it's really, I think having a profit goal is part of that too. And for us, I would say we're still in an investment phase. So we'd love to be a 20% profit, but honestly, like we'll take 10%, right? This year. And then later, we want to work up to that. But I'm absolutely what I'm all about is quality of life, not just for me, but for the people who work for us. And if we're like a really excellent company that only does 10 million a year, but makes 15, 20% profit, perfect. I'll take that.
Yeah, I mean, making $1.5 to $2 million a year wouldn't be too bad, right?
Oh, sure, yeah.
That's
I
what
mean,
that would
I'll
break
take.
out to
Yeah,
be.
it's funny because I'm just like I'm not worried about me. I know I'll be okay because I've got skills I can always fall back on if things get difficult. But it's really just for me. So we got into this personality testing that we've done, and do we have time to talk a little bit more? Okay. So the color code testing is something that I've really gotten interested in. It's more of an HR thing that you do to help understand yourself and your team. So, and I'll try to quickly sum it up, and I'll end up probably screwing up details, but the core of it is that we all have like a core motivation. And there's really just what they consider to be just 4 major motivations for people. So their first one, the red component, is power. That's control over you. These are the people who are motivated to be in control of what they're doing. A lot of business owners are reds. Then you have the blues, who are the people, they describe it as intimacy. I prefer to use the word like relationships. These are the people who are motivated
I like
by
relationships better.
Yes.
In the work environment.
Right.
They're like, I've got a lot of intimate workers. Like what's a weird word.
Yeah. I'm with you there. So
right.
The next one is peace. So that's white in the color code. People who are motivated by what makes them feel peaceful inside. And then fun. Those are the yellows. So we did this for everybody in our company, and I did it for myself. And as the test came back to me, so my dominant color is blue, relationships. My secondary color is white, and they'll give you all kinds of information that's helpful. And it's so important to understand yourself. But it's also really important to understand what other people are. And even if they don't take the color code test, which, we have that as a tool now for interacting with our coworkers, but also with our customers. You learn to recognize, okay, is this person, you ask questions and you find out, okay, is this person really motivated by what makes them feel good? Is fun, a component in it? And then people... And this helps you with your management team. They're the people who are kind of the red, the power. They're going to be kind of the no nonsense. Tell me what I need to do to be good at my job. And and you have a whole roadmap with how to interact with people.
Yeah, I'm sure I'd be a red because that sounds just like the DISC assessment, and I'm
It's
sure red is like the same as D, which is dominance or something like that.
Yes.
And it's funny because in sales, I always sell really well with those people because if you're like a D or a red. Yeah, it's no nonsense. It's straight to the point, and you just you move fast, really, really fast. You make decisions fast, and so it's funny. Hopefully one day we could figure out how to get information like this on our customers. Because speaking of how to make sales better,
all right.
I hate selling to analytical people because to me they move so slow, and I just want to forget about them because they need to be 90% sure before they buy.
Yeah.
And it just is so painful. And so it'd be funny because if you had a team of salespeople and you're like, oh, well, this person's an analytical salesperson, they could sell to other analytics.
Right.
And then same with all that. I know how powerful that stuff is, and I need to get into that from my own hiring. I've noticed that specifically how I want to use stuff like that is certain personalities do well in certain jobs.
Yes.
And obviously you wouldn't want someone who isn't probably high on a relationship scale to be a manager unless you want them to just be more of a drill sergeant, right? Or if they're a high power person. But yeah, no, that stuff is super interesting, and I need to get way more into that myself.
My business coach, so I think I already said it. So blue, I'm a blue white, so blue relationships, white peace. And that kind of leads into my introverted nature. I like quiet time. I need a certain amount. It's kind of recharging for me to be alone. And I think my coach was just being nice. Reds are usually the effective leaders because you do need to kind of have a no nonsense. You need that in your life. You need to at least summon the red if you're not a red.
Yeah.
But when talking about the blue white, he said, well, okay, the blue whites, they can be the best leaders because they care about their people. And so to hear something like that is, it's nice. And honestly, any personality type can be a great leader. It's not really, it doesn't define who you are. It's just a tool to help you.
Well, and plus if you know your weaknesses, then you can work on them. Like for me,
Right.
like I already know my weakness is attention to detail. So I surround myself with people who are really high in that.
Yes.
And then same thing, if you are a super high analytical person, you need to get someone like me on your team because I can light a fire under your ass and be like, dude, we don't have like, man, we only got one life. What are we doing? So you kind of need that balance. And it's good to know what you're strong at and what you're weak at. So you can make up for that yourself and bring in team members who can complement you because you don't want your whole team to all be one because you're going to be way out of balance. So I like that. My final question that I want to leave you with is there any books or any other outside information that you've read or experienced lately that you think would be good for other home service contractors?
I really liked Traction, which I already mentioned, especially
Very
if
good
even if you're just a one-man operation, it's really good to understand what a properly functioning team looks like so that as you grow, you can recognize kind of what you were just saying. If there are certain things that you're going to need on your team, you need to be looking for that in other people.
Yeah. Okay. Any others?
Oh gosh, I'm not a big reader. I really, a lot of the stuff that I take in is from Nexstar. It's it's a little bit of my curse to I'm just not big into reading.
Yeah. It's good though. I will say that some people are more the opposite where all they do is read and they don't take action. It's much better to focus on like one or two things and then actually implement it versus like some people are like, oh, I've read a bajillion books on marketing. I'm like, well, how much have you done? Or like, they're like, oh, I read about numbers. I'm like, well, have you started doing it? Because if not, right, it doesn't really matter. But cool. That's all that we have for today, Jason. So thanks so much for being here and taking the time out of your day. Hope the audience got some valuable stuff. I think they definitely did. And appreciate having you here.
Great. Thank you. I enjoyed it and wish you the best with this.
All right. Thanks.